Hey, hello, everyone. Welcome to the ComicBase Livestream. I'm your host, Pete Bickford. I am the creator of ComicBase and a few other things. And yeah, thank you all for showing up here. We had unbelievably, actually, I think kind of a smooth launch. Thank you very much, everyone who's been putting up with our technical problems over the last few weeks. It's been a learning experience about the new soundboards and various other things. But anyway, thank you for all hanging out with us. Today, we are going to be talking about all the weird stuff that you can track in ComicBase or that you might have laying around in your room and want to track somewhere. And we'll tell you how you can deal with an enormous amount of it actually within ComicBase and probably show you some things you had never seen before. But it's actually drawn by a number of tech support queries and phone calls we've gotten to say, well, I've got this weird thing. Where do I do with it? And as I was hunting around for topics and everything, I just decided on the whole thing and put in the request for Mark to come up with cover art. And at 3:30 in the morning, the exact same question came in one more time. And so I thought, well, clearly it's like me and the folks out there. We are like this, And so this is what this is meant to be. This is the weird things episode of the ComicBase live stream. So anyway, welcome all here. I'm glad you all could make it. There were a number of other folks earlier on. I guess one of the earlier questions I don't have an answer for is, what does YouTube do with the earlier chats if you come in really, really early waiting for a live stream? I don't know. But anyway, I did see Richard Scott was in the house earlier on. Agent of Camp, first in the official line here from breezy Northeast Florida. Brian Price from Green Bay, Wisconsin. Hey, welcome. Hope everything's good back in, I went to school in Madison, so I hope everything's good back there. Let's see here. Yeah. Everyone has asked us about the art for the whole thing. It's like, how do you have a box of digital comics? Yeah, I'm going to just plead guilty on that one. Honestly, I asked Mark, hey, here's the art request for the live stream this week, and so I wanted basically write down all the things I wanted to talk about. And so I said, show boxes of this stuff laying around, and he did exactly what I asked him to do. So, I cannot blame him whatsoever. Anyway, Greg Hex in the house here. So sun finally came out there in South Jersey. Rob Weinberg's from here, Toledo, Ohio. He said, made a joke earlier and put it in the chat. I think I got banned. It was sent to the court. No, we didn't ban you. I just saw the thing. You actually had a prediction market thing about the live stream starting on time. I did not ban you. I had nothing to do with that. I don't know if the AI chat overlords of Google did something, but I don't know. Tim Legralo, aka Tim Kilbreth in the house from Rockford. Let's see here. Greg's on the loose. Something. Okay. Lots and lots of strange things in the chat. We're just going to take it. Let's see. Greg says, I'm not sure what the house will be like today. I'm at the usual place where Pete and I do sound check. I'm not seeing or hearing any evidence that he is here. I'm here. I kind of wondered where you were, but that's okay. We're all good here, guys. Chris Bracel is here, Larry Herring, and anyone else who's in the chat and hasn't said hi. Ed, it looks like Ed joined us here from Canada, and let's get on with it. So a couple of quick announcements about ComicBase before we get going. There's a 26.2.2 out there, or if you're just checking for the official updates, you'll see a 26.2.1 build 4,158 or something silly like that. It fixes just a couple of the little glitches that appeared after the big release last week. Some people had reported that after either Modder had gone to sleep or it had not done a refresh, that some of the optimizations had kicked in and didn't redraw the screen properly. So we handled that. We fixed a problem downloading. If you'd ever done, let's see, you'd sold something on Atomic Avenue, and one of the things you can do on that system, and it integrates very nicely with ComicBase, is if you go and you sell a book and then say put it up for near mint, and someone buys it, and then you go to pull the book, and right before you ship out, you say, oh, I messed up. It's not actually near mint. There's a process that you can suggest a regrade where it'll say, okay, yeah, no, I know some damage to the book that I hadn't seen before. The real grade would be this, and the price as a result gets knocked down to a lower price. Did you want to take it in that price, or in that price and grade, or did you want to blow it off the order? Anyway, there's a process where you can do that, and if you had if someone had then taken the regraded book and accepted it, there was like just something wrong with the sales interface, which we fixed. It was throwing an error on with the regrade of the book when you try to integrate that back into ComicBase. So if you got any errors with the latest one, it is fixed in the latest. So if you download the latest version of ComicBase from the internet, check for updates. It should take care of that. Honestly, it's worth doing in any case. We put out whenever we do a force update, so we change like the second or third version number. So it's like the 26.2 is the big quarterly update. 26.2.1 would be the oops. There's some things here that we think have at least some chance of being affecting normal people, and so we'll quietly slip that out into the channel. But you will get a note when next time you go to download content updates that, hey, there's an update to the program available. Always go ahead and say yes on that. Some people had asked questions about some people who had upgraded older versions of Crystal Reports in recent days. This always comes up when people are coming from older versions and so forth. Crystal Reports is the print engine that ComicBase and frankly pretty much every desktop program on your Windows PC is using to drive reporting. We had put out a Service Pack 36 was the fixed version of Crystal Reports that they put out there. If you'd had an older version on your machine, or if your antivirus software had been particularly overly zealous, you might be getting some kind of error when you try to go printing reports. If so, there's a forum post on this one, but basically the short version is go ahead and uninstall ComicBase, reinstall, make sure you uninstall Crystal Reports when you do that, and it'll update the latest service pack, and then that will take care of you on that one if somehow that got in your way. Most people don't seem to be having any problem with it, but if a couple of people did, and so if that bit you, go ahead and just download that service pack and we'll take it from there. There's also a forum post on the topic if you want to get that directly, and I'm probably going to link straight to the Crystal Reports latest service pack just from the product download links. If you go to download your product, there's the suggested downloads, and then there's other where you can see obscure things you can download. I'll probably put a link to their service pack in the other. Crystal Reports is interesting software. It's currently owned by a company called SAP, which German company. I actually had the chance to fly out there and talk to their engineers at one point on a completely unrelated consult, because they're just a ginormous company out in the middle of a field. But anyway, it's a strange piece of software in that it's one of these absolutely critical pieces of infrastructure in the world of computers, and yet no one seems to love it as a corporate overlord much. It's been passed around from a number of different companies just in the time we've been using it, and it's always maintained grudgingly. Luckily, it's pretty solid, so as long as you don't move it much, it seems to work pretty well. But there was one or two little weird things about it that did get fixed in their service pack. So we did include the more recent service pack in ComicBase 2026. But if you have an older version of the software from like 2025 era, possibly that got messed up for you, but it should have taken care of it automatically. But if it didn't, let us know. All right, so enough about that. Let's see. Okay, so some other things are going on. We have a new version of the forum software. So forums.comicbase.com. So this is the announcement we always do at the end of the show. I'm going to do it towards the front of the show for once. If you are interested in talking to your fellow ComicBase users, or asking questions, or getting advice from people like that, yes, the people at ComicBase actually sleep at night occasionally. The people in the forums never seem to. So if you go to forums.comicbase.com, or if you're on Atomic Avenue, forums.atomicavenue.com, both of those, we've just gotten updated versions of the forum software on that, and it's got a bunch of new things. We're interested in doing fun things with them, but check them out and see what you think. And we're excited to see what we can do with the new forum software. It looks like there's a lot more ability to integrate pictures and things like that in with the whole thing. So I'm looking forward to giving that one a spin. But we just got that updated, a couple hours before press time here, or show time. So give that a whirl, and we'll see what you think. And other things coming in is the content update for this week. We have not seen books from either Lunar or Penguin, probably due to the holiday. So I would not expect the content update for this week out before Friday. But we will push it the second that we see some physical books. And honestly, we're going to push it on Friday regardless of that, because we gotta do things. We have gotten the new lists from Lunar and Penguin. So if you're looking to put in your orders, or pre-index your books from 2 or 3 months out from now, that will now be possible as part of this week's update. So look for that wherever fine comic software is sold. Okay, so enough with that. Moving on. Hello hello, Jet City Comics. Welcome to the chat. And let's go into the weird stuff Olympics on the whole thing. Greg Hicks says, it looks like at least some users will need to update their password on the forums, so they try to log in until you're using the wrong password, try resetting your password. So the password on the forums is actually using that one from ComicBase. But if your browser cache is stale, I would say log out, clear your browser cache, log in. It should take care of you. But resetting your password, if your password is ridiculously short on comicbase.com, doesn't hurt to reset, but we'll look into it. All right, so going on to things. So ComicBase, let's actually flip over to the demo machine for once, and I'm going to try to put myself in the frame. And I did not do the artful thing where I put myself in a circle, so we'll live with it. Everything else has been working so ridiculously well this show. I'm just going to take the win while I've got it. All right, so you guys probably know that ComicBase tracks a number of different things. This actually strangely came up with recent email discussions had. We have, by current counts, something just short of 1.5 million comic books listed in the system, as well as close to 4 million newspapers, hundreds of thousands of books and magazines and so forth, but a lot of stuff. It started out just, the program's called ComicBase, for Christ's sakes, but it started out as just comic books. But amongst other things, one of our customers is Bob Bretal, the guy with the world record, the Guinness World Record for the largest comic book collection. And so part of what the Guinness Committee had decided of doing that is they had to have a definition whenever you, I guess. So I guess the Guinness Book of World Records was the reason it's Guinness. It is Guinness like the beer. It was created as a way of settling bar bets. That's how the entire thing came up, because it's the national sport of Ireland is fighting over things in bars. So anyway, at one point, the fine folks at Guinness decided, we've got to have is a definitive source where we go around and we have the absolutely 100% standard. This is the way it was for all the, the biggest this, the fastest that, the whatever else. And eventually it became a number of just very silly things you could have the biggest or the fastest or the tallest or the whatever for. And one of them was you could have the world's largest comic book collection. Well, in order to define who has the world's largest comic book collection, because they didn't want it coming to somebody who just had an aircraft hangar full of copies of Spawn versus Batman #1, that's not what the sporting folks of Guinness would have decided. So they had to come up with what is the definition of a comic book. And a comic book, they have decided, much like Scott Adams had, not Scott Adams. Scott. Oh, good Lord, I'm blanking on him. Understanding Comics. Anyway, what he had decided way back is that basically it's pictorial. It's the juxtaposition of words and pictures in order to tell a coherent story. They decided that a comic book is a single issue. So if you have 10 of the same thing, it only counts as one. A single issue of such a thing. If it is just of pinups, or if it's just like an art portfolio, if it's a storybook, just so it's it's words and pictures, but the words are just describing the pictures. They're not part of the dialogue the way that they are in comic books. If it is if it's just about comics, if it's just like something like Seduction of the Innocent, which we used to list in comic books because it's such an important book. It was one of the things that brought upon the creation of the Comics Code. All those things do not count as comic books for various reasons. So it became very important for us to all these things that we tracked along with, because they were things that comic people had in their collections. We used to have them all lumped in as comic books once upon a time, and it was decided, in order to stay along with the Guinness folks, and that we wanted to adopt the same definition they did about the whole thing, and to separate all the other things into their own categories. So if you've got a book of art pinups and things like that, no longer was it a pinup style comic book, even if it's comic book sized. The actual binding format is immaterial to whether or not it counts as a comic book. But if it doesn't contain comic stories, if it's not periodical in nature, typically it would go down as being a book. If it's periodical in nature, but it does not contain comic stories. A really good example of this one is the official index of the Marvel Universe. Let me go ahead and pull those ones up. You guys are all probably familiar with it, but if anyone's watching the live stream and is not, official, I can type, really, I can. Here we are. Official handbook of the Marvel Universe. So these were, back in the day, comic-sized books that cost a whole buck, where they would illustrate in each one, all the different characters and tell you all their powers and things like that. And they looked exactly like a comic book at the time, but they contained no comic book stories. And so, for the purposes of Guinness, and thus for the purposes of us, they are not comics, even though they are comic-sized. Same thing goes for distributor catalogs. A lot of times, Dark Horse, Marvel, DC, and Dynamite will distribute their own their distributor catalogs in comic format, but they have no comic stories, so not comic books. They're considered magazines. And then, similar to this, it's not many people collect them. Some people do the thing where, like, I'll have I'll collect the newspaper where it's the New York Times when 9/11 happened, or when I was born, or something like that. Some people will collect newspapers where it comes up more frequently in comics world is things like just comic newspapers, just where it's news of the day in that kind of format. Newspapers are a separate thing. They are periodical, but typically news related, and so forth. So they are their own category. So they're out there. And if you guys are ever wondering what the official definitions are, and you don't want to just remember my rant on this one, I'll point you to the first tip on this one, which is go to File Tools. Go to Choose Media Types in Database. And if you have never done this with your database, do it right now, because you will thank me later. But what it will do here is, and as you go over each one, it will actually give you the definition just as you move your mouse over it. So magazines, periodicals, typically staple or glue bound, which do not primarily contain comic stories, newspapers, unbound periodicals, primarily focused on news, usually published at least once a week, etc. So it'll tell you those definitions, but more importantly, from this dialogue, if there's any of these things you don't collect, you can take them out of your collection and save yourself probably a ton of space. The number one that you probably want to take out, if it somehow got carried across from an older version of ComicBase, is you probably, if you don't collect them, take out newspapers, because there's almost 4 million of the bloody things. If you don't collect them, your database is going to shrink dramatically, and the time required to do updates every week is also going to shrink dramatically. If you do, collect anything, by all means keep it in there. Nothing, it doesn't hurt you, but it's all for the same low price. But anyway, but you can certainly save yourself a bit of time if you get rid of things that you don't collect. Now, if you get rid of things you don't collect, it will never delete things that are marked as in stock. So if you do screw up and say, like, no, I actually don't collect comic books, and you uncheck comic books, it will not delete your entire collection. It'll just delete everything that you don't own. But that might not be what you want either. So, but go ahead and check this before you go. Afterwards, it'll delete anything that you unchecked. It will reset the what you would call them, it'll recompact the database, and it'll take it from there. All right, so that is number one. And some other questions about forums. Steve Dazzler says, for my old login ID was just a login ID. Now in a case it wants an email address. Yeah, I'm sorry, that is a thing that it wants. So you will want to put in, if you had like just forum ID, like Bob or something like that, when you log in, it's not going to want Bob, it's going to want whatever your email address is. There was a security change of mind that they had, the forum software guys, is they didn't want you logging in with any publicly known username. So for some reason, emails are good and usernames are bad. Don't know, but go ahead and just use your user ID, your email on that one. It should take it for you. All right, and Scott McLeod, thank you very much. And that was the person I was trying to think of for understanding comic books. Okay, so first question is, if you are looking around in ComicBase and you don't see where something goes, check the other categories. Now, one thing that's really nice in ComicBase is if you just start typing the name, it's going to suggest things starting with the category you're looking at, but it will suggest things from all manner of categories. So let's choose something that I might get hits from, various things. Okay, like Black Mask. That's a good one, because this will come up later. I'm currently looking in magazines, and so it's coming up with the Black Mask pulp magazine from Pro Distributors back in 1920. There was apparently a British one. There's also a Black Mask comic book, and even though I typed in Black Mask exactly, and that is an exact hit, this was it was further down the line in what it suggested up here. Let's see if I can zoom this up here. I guess I gotta kick in the magnifier. But yeah, up at the top here, as I type, it's going to suggest, either the last title you visited, or it's going to suggest things starting with the media that you're in right now. And currently I'm browsing magazines, so it's going to suggest magazines first. But it will also suggest anything from other things, as long as some part of the title matches. And so it's kind of in order of how good the match is. But anyway, if you don't immediately see, like, let's say I'm looking for, I'm looking in comic books and I don't immediately see an official Marvel index to the Amazing Spider-Man or something like that, just scroll down and you'll probably find it's in magazines and so forth. Now, in all the things, if you're ever looking around in ComicBase, anything since about the summer of 1992, my number one go-to tip for anything at all to find it in the database is, if it's got a barcode, oh, for goodness sake, put the barcode in. It's just going to make your life so much easier. So we've gone over what's, the stuff in barcodes about 1 million times. Just suffice for say, if you've got a barcode scanner, just bleep the darn thing in, and wherever the darn thing is in the database, it will take you instantly to it if we've ever seen that barcode before, which, as it turns out, the odds are incredibly good for. But one thing is, if you have to plug the barcode scanner into the same machine that you're scanning into. So as I'm demoing on one demo machine, and I thought, I'll just beep it in on the other. Yes, that is a trick that only works if you connected the barcode to that machine. Pro tip. All right, so that's an actual thing we do. All right, so next question about weird stuff. And this comes up every year. Oh, how we adore this season. And that is, what the heck do we do about Free Comic Book Day, things, or as they're now known, Comics Giveaway Day, or sometimes known as First Saturday in May Day. It's all the same idea. The idea is that we're going to have a big promotional event from all the comic book retailers in the country, and the publishers will make available to the people at low cost, typically about $0.25 each, big piles of whatever it is they want to spotlight. They're not free, but they're cheap. And the idea is that if we tell the world, hey, if you go to your local comic book store and on the first Saturday in May, you will be given the chance to see lots and lots of free comic books. The publishers are thinking, hey, I will show off my new line. We will do new things. If your local comic book guy has any brains and any ability to organize and any connections in the community, he's going to try to run sales or do specials, or have artist signings or giveaways of his own and so forth. And it's a really great way to get people turned on to comic books just in general. Now, remember how I said that the lunar and the penguin things we index those about 2 months ahead of time. And so typically by the time, the book actually hits the streets, if you're just entering your books in with a barcode, they're just good to go. You don't have to do a darn thing. And that's typically wonderful. The problem on that one is Comics Giveaway Day is, oh, dear Lord, they're never, ever, 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 ever listed in the solicitations the way that they will appear when you finally see them, up close and personal. It's some kind of unwritten rule of the industry is, every publisher, no matter how big, no matter how small, must never list a book under the same title and indicia and issue number that they solicited under. So we are going to, in at least half the times, guess wrong about what this thing winds up hitting the street looking like. And so there's always a quickie update that we do about 5 minutes after Comics Giveaway Day, once we've actually seen the real books. Now, a lot of times we get to see the books well ahead of time, but this year, with the collapse of Diamond Distributors, books came out erratically or not at all. So there are some books that only appeared in certain parts of the country, some books that, just they sort of forgot to ship them to people, and then they shipped them later. So it's just, it was way more chaotic than usual this year as far as getting things. But if we get them ahead of time, typically if you're watching the listings, you'll see that we'll put up, there'll be a thing that says, the amazing, Spider-Man, Queen in Black, or, something like that. It'll be called, CGD #1 for Comics Giveaway Day #1. I'm just saying that for instance right now. Now, I haven't opened this one up recently and looked at what the indicia actually tells me about the whole thing. And it turns out that the actual thing is called Amazing Spider-Man Now it's just called The Amazing Spider-Man, and something comics giveaway day number blah blah blah. So it probably is 6th series or something like that. Anyway, when this stuff comes out, super important. The good news on this one is virtually all of them, no matter how they were mislabeled in the solicitation process, no matter whether or not we were able to get a copy of the real book a week or two before it really hit the streets for the rest of y'all and fix it, whatever happens on that day, when you get your free comic book day stuff in, or comics giveaway day, or first Saturday in May Day books, just beep the barcode in and pray to God that it takes you to the right place, which it will do 99% of the time. I'm saying this out of love, but because we've all been there, man. This, like I say, it's been a mess since the word go as far as how these things are solicited. Sometimes they get entered, categorized as an entry within the series itself. Sometimes it's there was a big debate in the forums recently about typically we'll say things like it's the name of the title, Free Comic Book Day, and then name the year if it's been like Spidey and His Amazing Friends. There's been a Free Comic Book Day 2023, 2024, 2025, 2026, and so forth. And then sometimes the publishers will just pull a funny where they'll solicit it as 2026, and then they'll put a big number 0 right on the cover or something like that, and then label as number 0, and they just see it, and then spark rabid fights in the forums from all the people who'd pre-indexed the stuff that they got from the stores as Free Comic Book Day 2026, and only to have hilariously everyone submitting now corrections for it as number 0 because they like oh, how naive, actually read what was on the cover and assumed that was the number. So yeah, that's a thing that happens. The short version on all this really is beep in the barcode. It will do the best for you, that one. But please, before you submit the title on your own, check and see if it's there already. These are those days in the weeks following Free Comic Book Day, or whatever we call it these days, where we handle a lot of corrections. And before we take them, we always have to kind of like say, all right, stop, halt. You're listing what appears to be a new title here. Let us take the barcode you just submitted, see if it's already in there as something else. And we wind up rejecting a lot of corrections that way. So yeah, we're not trying to dupe up, we inevitably do at some point take something we shouldn't take, but then we wind up deleting again. That just causes chaos. So please, if you can, beep in the barcode before you submit the new thing. It will generally take you to the right place, and in the rare case that it's something that's completely not in the database, at that point, send it in. But that was the very first thing I would say on those. All right, let's switch topics a little bit here. I've been talking for a while, so let me just double check the chat and see if I haven't gotten too far ahead of myself. Okay, great. So let's talk about something that a lot of people don't know that ComicBase can do, and that is digital comic books. So, all right, and I'm going to go ahead and make this just a little bit smaller if I can see it. Okay, cool. All right, so I want to introduce you to a friend of mine. This is a comic book site called Comic Book Plus. So Comic Book Plus is a really interesting site. It's free. You can get a free account on it. Costs absolutely nothing. They do want to verify you just to make sure that you're a real human being before they let you in. But what this is it's meant as a public archive of public domain comic books, pulp magazines, dime novels, old time radio shows. They've got a lot of really neat stuff in there. So if you like that sort of stuff, and I think you definitely should check it out. But do go over to comicbookplus.com, where you'll find all sorts of neat things. Well, one of the things that you can do with this one is you can download legal copies of comic books. Now, these are things where the copyright has expired and they've gone into the public domain. Typically, now, and again, I'm not going to do the lawyering for, say Archie Publications and so forth. So, for instance, Blackhawk. So we're saying public domain comic books. All right, this is me putting on my lawyer hat for a moment and just saying, all right, it's technically illegal, and yet there might be reasons why, there is legal issues to be solved around them. Is you can have a property fall into public domain in terms of copyright as long as the character is used in active commerce. the trademark has no necessary expiration date. So, for instance, this guy you see in the front there, who is a World War II, ace, aviator, you and I might know him as Black Hawk. Black Hawk, so far as I know, is still a trademark owned by DC, DC Comics, and it's been used constantly since the world, he was introduced back in the 40s. Now, the original Black Hawk comics that were in there may or may not have slipped into public domain. I didn't personally check, so I couldn't tell you. But could you call it Black Hawk? Some lawyers would definitely make a case saying, no, you could call it, famous aviator comics if you want, but you couldn't call it Black Hawk. So go figure. So that's a thing. Anyway, but regardless of that, they have a whole ton of comic books, and so forth, and you are free to download them. So, Ajax Farrell, this is fantastic stuff. If you love, just really, lurid comics. They had a lot of the LB Cole covers and things like that. This was it's funny. They were one of these, I would say, like a third tier publisher back in the 40s and 50s, who had occasionally some of the best cover art you will ever see. Not great stories for the most part, but let's say you want to actually just check them out, and you want to say, okay, so let's check out Captain Jet. So click on here, scroll down, and if you've made an account, you can actually just pull up the individual comic book and actually download the whole comic book and actually read through it. So let's go ahead. I actually went in earlier, and I went to the pulp section here, but yeah, what the heck, we'll go back there, and let's go to Pulp Magazines and go to Pulp Magazines, scroll down, and let's go to Crime and Detective. Let's go as pulpy as we can get. All right, let's go to The Black Mask. And this is from, this approximately 1920 is when this one came out. So you can actually take this one, and if you've got an account, you can just go ahead and download the actual issue. So here's Black Mask, Volume 1, Number 5. And if you go to, click on the hard to see download file button here, this is going to download in a file format known as CBZ, which I think is meant to more or less say comic books zipped up. I didn't name the formats, but that's what they call for. Now, in order to read these things, because if you open them up, they're going to be a zip collection of like a WinZip, so a compressed folder full of comic images, in CBR format. You're going to need something called a CBZ or a CBR reader. So you're going to want a viewer program for this one, because they're not typically viewable straight in Windows. So the one I would say have a look at first, and by all means, look for your own, but look for a application here called Cover. You can get it right from the App Store. It's free on Windows, but it's made by French Fry. Go figure. I didn't, didn't name the company, but I'm going to say decent interface, looks nice, performs well, does the thing. So if you have downloaded Black Mask over here, and if you've also downloaded some sort of CBZ reader file, so when you double click on files in Windows and it knows what to do with them, then at this point ComicBase will do something that's actually kind of magical. So let's go to Black Mask. And hey, if you happen to have the actual books, God bless, that's even better. But let's say you don't. And here we are. Here's issue number 105. And you can see we've got the picture for that one there. It's kind of a crummy picture because whoever scanned it did not have access to a particularly good one. But one thing that we've now got, because we downloaded it right from the site here, and have a look here at this column right below to the left of the picture. This is the thing that looks like a little bit like a play button. If I take that copy of Black Mask number 5 and I name it exactly the same as the issue in the grid here, so 105, volume 1, number 5, I can actually just drag that into ComicBase like this, and then you'll see that it gets a little play button will appear right next to the to the issue, and if I hold down the shift key and I drag it, it'll actually just file my media directly in there. It's a great way of cleaning up all. If you collect a lot of these sorts of files on your thing, you can just drag them onto their spots in ComicBase, and they will just file themselves nicely away. If I want to see where it went to, I can just right-click on it right here, and say, where is it here? Show media file in Explorer. It'll show you where it put it, which in this case is the public documents, human computing media. Just like there's a pictures folder, there's a media folder. P, Pro Distribution, Black Mask, the Pro Distributors, and there's my 105.cbr file right there. So it's just going to file these nicely away inside my media folder, which if you look at it right now, this is the demo computer, so it only has exactly one image in it. But some people have really huge libraries of digital comic books and books and things like that, and this will handle them all. It will, you notice that it will let you have old-time radio shows if you like that sorts of things. If you create a title for old-time radio shows, you can copy in media files for those. It'll store movies. So if you've got movie files, it'll store URLs. If you have links to even web pages or online comic book references and so forth, all you have to do is drag them onto the grid here. And if you either let go of them right on top of the media type in question, or better yet, name them the same ahead of time and then just grab them all and just dump them on, it'll file them all away. And again, you'll see the links will appear right next to it. So okay, so I got a link next to it. So what? Well, here's the neat thing. Whenever I go to Black Mask now and I click on it, I just click that thing right there, and suddenly here is the book. And now I am reading Black Mask from August 1920. There we go. And here's the whole thing. And so this is just really, really cool. It's a great way of organizing your digital libraries and so forth. And like I say, it'll do it for all the stuff. It'll do it for audiovisual, books, movies, you name it. As long as you can associate with a title, drag it in there and you're good to go. Now, this raises an interesting question. Well, let's say I've got a lot of movie titles or things like that, and they're not comic books and they're not books. Let's say I just like collecting old time, radio shows. All right. Now, ComicBase does not have a type for old time radio show, but it does have a type for book. It does have a type for magazine, whatever seems most appropriate to you on this one. I would go ahead and just abuse the system a little bit on that one. At which point, just go ahead and create your own title. Let's say I wanted to have the Shadow radio shows. I could create a new title called the Shadow radio shows. Make it as perhaps a magazine. Add in the issues for whatever the volumes or the episodes I want to do for the whole thing. And in ComicBase, we have the ability to do season style numbering. So if you want to say this is the Shadow radio shows, you could say 1935 number 1 through however many times a year they did the show, and set up all the entries for the whole thing, and then drag the audio files onto that one, and then you would have your library of radio shows right in ComicBase. The only thing I'd say to warn you about that one is make sure if you're doing that, set the quantities on those to 1. I know it's radio shows, you kind of have them, you kind of don't. It's not really a physical thing at this point. We're talking about digital media. But I'm going to say, if you're going to add something that isn't real, if it's ephemeral, like sound files or movies or radio shows or things like that, just as their own title, it's not something that we would typically track within ComicBase ourselves. Because what we're going to do from the master version of ComicBase here is we're going to track, real articles. We're not going to track digital files. But if you do that, set the quantity to 1. The reason is if you do that, then when you download an update, if you have the settings set to remove unknown items, that way it'll never try to remove that title that you've added. That'll never be in the master. So good pro tip on that one. So we'll take that. Steve Dessinger says, be a storage hint. If you have a lot of media files, you might want to use file tools, manage pictures, movies, and change the location of the media stored. That's a great one, and let's do that to it right now. So let's show you what that's about. So if you've got a big enough hard disk for your drive, that's great. If you don't have a big enough hard drive, you might want to, a lot of people have an auxiliary hard drive or an external or things like that. Might want to take advantage of this, the ability to change your media so it's stored someplace different. So if you go into File menu, go to File Tools, and then just go to Manage Pictures and Movies, you've got the ability in here to set where it stores pictures and logos, And also, where's your media folder? So for storing digital books, comics, etc. And you can set these to anywhere you want. Now, by default, it's going to be on your C drive in the public documents. But it doesn't need to be. You can set this anywhere you want. Just click the folder button over there and, set it to your E drive or something else. Yeah, particularly, like I say, some people have just enormous media libraries, and they don't necessarily need to be on your fastest SSD. Maybe if you've just got some really big old mechanical hard drive and you store the stuff on, that works great. If you've got a NAS, sure, go ahead and do that too. But yeah, as long as it is accessible from within the thing, you will see it and it'll pick it up automatically. I'd say if your hard drive is stupid slow, so a lot of times I saw, who's the person who used to make them? Western Digital used to make some external drives that you'd hook up via USB, and some of them were even like USB 2. If you have something that is just ridiculously slow, be a little careful about putting your media there, because whenever you go to a title, it is going to scan the drive to see, hey, has this guy got any media of that type? And so if it's one of those things where, spinning up your hard drive is like sending a telegram to, or, sending a courier pigeon over to Peru, you want to make sure that it doesn't take forever to spin up your hard drive. Otherwise, just moving around ComicBase is going to get very slow for you. I haven't seen this as a major problem in the last 10 years, but I definitely know in the olden era, since we added that feature, there were people who were like repurposing some very old, very slow hard drives for that purpose. And they're like, hey, why is ComicBase running so slowly? It's like, well, that would be why. All right. So that is all I want to say about that. Let's talk about some other things in the world. So I've beaten you up about, I'm sorry, I've made careful suggestions about always use the barcode if you possibly can to help locate where different things go. Make sure that you're using the appropriate categories for the type of media that you're referring to, whether it's a periodical, whether it's contains comic stories or not. Stick things under the appropriate type. It is very much appreciated. And by the way, if you do create new media that think is going to be of interest to us, very, very helpful to everyone really, is if you go ahead and, if I were to have, let's say I'd added Black Mask from Pro Distributors, highlight the new title after you add it yourself here, right click down and say submit new or corrected data. What that does is it sends the data to our editor so that we can look at it, and if it's appropriate, review it, add it to the master database, which then becomes part of everybody's information that we can all see. And it also does some very nice things for you. One is it makes it so that this is media that then can be bought and sold on Atomic Avenue and priced, so that if your collection is in there, we actually will then be able to feed you back market data as these things buy and sell on the site. And also you'll get updates from, say, heritage auctions and things like that, especially with pulps. They're doing more and more with that these days. The other thing is, if it's part of the official database, it'll never be an unknown item that'll never be removed, if even by accident, if you had remove unknown items set automatically and you had not remembered to mark it as in stock for you. So yeah, always whenever you add your own stuff, if you think it's of use to us, right click and say submit new or corrected data to us, and that helps everybody. So all right, so other things I want to say about that. All right, so I've got my stack of comic books over here. Okay, books, trade. Oh, let's talk a little bit about trade paperbacks. Trade paperbacks are another one of these things that are kind of a pain in the tuchus. If any comic person is coming along here and saying, wow, comic collecting is really pretty involved. Yes, comic book collecting is really pretty involved these days. Let's go to my favorite, Hellblazer. All right, Hellblazer, if you haven't read it, absolutely terrific series about John Constantine. He's kind of a roguish wizard type of person. Anyway, so here is all the issues of John Constantine. By the way, some fantastic cover, going down here. And then we get down to the bottom, we're going to get to the books. All right, and that's where the fun begins. All right, so what's a book? All right, let's just start there. All right, so a lot of people, when you start out, will say things like, hey, I'm looking for this thing, and I've got the comic in my hand, and it's annual number, 2023, but I don't see a thing called Hellblazer Annual as a title. Well, no, because any comic book store owner in his right mind would not put the annuals in a completely separate divider section, no, they get slotted in as a different comic type, under the main title. So if I double click on, say, annual number 1, you'll see that it says annual number 1. Its abbreviation is ANL, but these are the things that appear down at the bottom of the main title. And there can be both different comic type, item types. You've got everything from ash cans, books, Christmas specials, giveaways, hardcover novels, etc., down to variations. And the variations are back in the olden days. Let's gather around, kids. Well, Grandpa Pete tells you how it was back in the day. Now, back in the old days, it used to be things like, there'd be things like lovely things like collector's set or bronze editions or silver editions or gold foil editions and so forth. And then they decided, no, let's just make so very, 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 very many variations of these things that there's no way around it anymore. Yes, you're going to have just variations which go from here to infinity, and that's how it goes these days. So these days, when a new book comes into the system, you rarely see us use the more descriptive variations from way back when, like bronze or silver. Now, typically, just like everyone else these days, we've been beaten into submission, and we'll say just, okay, that's the A version, the B version, the C version, the D version. Notable exceptions for things like the newsstand version or the Mark Jewelers version, because those ones go way back. But anyway, the main thing you want to do is, when you're looking at a comic book, you say, is it its own title or is it a different comic type within the regular title? And that's where books come in. A book is a trade paperback. So here's book 1 for Hellblazer, right? It looks like this. And if you looked at it along the spine, it would actually say book 1, which is very nice. And this one over here, I believe, reprints, it's called Original Sins. Yeah, it collects Hellblazer number 1 through 9. Now, it's called book 1, but it's not a book. And that, bears some saying. Remember, it contains nothing but comic stories. So, it's not, it was still originally a periodical. And just because it's a collection of those doesn't transform it into a different kind of media. Remember, books are not for things that contain comic stories primarily. And so even though it's book format, remember the format is not the type. So this is still considered a book. It's a trade paperback. If it's a hardcover, it'll typically be book 1/HC as for the hardcover variation. And that's how these things will tend to go. Well, that's great. And if we take our mind back to about 2000 or so, when book 1 from Hellblazer came out, it was pretty simple. Okay, book 1 collects issues 1 through 9, fine. It went back for second printing. Okay, book 1-2, second printing. Got it. There's a third printing, a fourth printing, a fifth printing. All right, book 2 came out. Okay, fine, fair enough. Dangerous Habits. Now, Dangerous Habits, interesting about that one, it didn't collect, we did 1 through 9 with Hellblazer book 1. We didn't do 10 through 18 next because those ones were considered not that interesting. Book 2 is the first one from Garth Ennis's run, which, by the way, if you haven't read a Hellblazer story, this is the arc to read. I mean, just literally stop everything you're doing now, read this one right here. It's a freaking fantastic story. It makes you happy to be reading horror comics. Good, terrific covers by Glenn Fabry. I mean, there's nothing not to love about this whole thing. Garth Ennis was absolutely in his prime. The storytelling is wicked and smart, and it's just really neat stuff. And so that's why they made this one book 2. No one cared about issues 10, 11, 12, etc. at the time. And then they did, they thought, well, let's go back and we'll do some other things. And here's book 3, looks completely different. It actually says volume 3 on it. Book 4 actually says volume 4 on the end of it. The thing's starting to catch on a little bit. It's becoming a more popular series. And then they start randomly collecting weird arcs in no particular order as we go. And this went on for a number of years, and eventually they started putting numbers down the spines, but this was well after the fact. They'd published at least 8 or 9 of these before they started giving them any kind of discrete numbering. So when you go out and you pick up something, which may, this one which says, Constantine Hellblazer Red Sepulchre, which may or may not have a 16 down the side. How the hell do you find this thing in the database? All right, so number 1, what are we all going to do? Barcode, right? So if you can pull it from the barcode, it'll take you straight through there, and all mysteries are solved, except for why the hell we call it book 16. The answer is because it was the 16th one they published. It's for a lot of years, the publishers did not have anything like a trade paperback strategy. Unlike manga, which starts out, there's a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5, and they keep going and going and going, and no one ever drops in and says, "Hey, let me do number 5 before I do number, immediately before number 11." That's not a thing that the manga world does, but in the comics, we do that kind of crap all the time. But anyway, no, so it came out the 16th in a row. We'd already been doing a whole bunch of books and coping with this insanity for about 20 years at that point. So when the next one came out after 15, it was going to be 16. That's just the way it is. Now, the ruling on this is if it collects only from a single series. So if it's just a collection of Hellblazers and nothing but Hellblazers, maybe the odd ash can from like a free comic book day thing, sure. But if it's just really collecting Hellblazer, then it goes under the main title. It'll be book whatever under that thing. If it collects from multiple titles, on the other hand, so think about the Avengers Infinity War. Right, that one would, or the Infinity Gauntlet quest, that one would collect from, the Korvac. I'm sorry, the Korvac quest, the one I'm thinking of. That one would collect random issues from, here's an issue from Punisher, an issue from Amazing Spider-Man, an issue from the Avengers, and so forth. It would collect all that food like that. That would get its own title. But when it would only collect from a single title, it would typically get stored under that, under that particular thing. Well, as you can see where this is going. It was fine when there were onesie twosies of these things, and often they were numbered. That was great. But when there get to be 20 of them, 30 of them, 50 of them, and they're in no particular order and they're not numbered, then it gets completely unsupportable. It really becomes hard to find these things. Enter the item title. So you'll notice that this thing, if I were just picking this thing up, I'd think the thing was called Constantine Red Sepulchre. I'll be honest, I'm not 100% certain what a sepulcher is, at least not in this sense. But anyway, so what we have done, though, is we have come up with an alternate mechanism where you can actually give an individual item an alternate name, which I'm not sure if this one was given one. It was good. So you can actually say, even though this is book 16 of Hellblazer, it's also known as Red Sepulchre. Right, so this gives you a lovely cross reference where, like, if I didn't know this was Hellblazer number 16, I didn't necessarily think to go there. I can actually just type Red Sepulchre or Sepulchre. I don't know. It's one of these words that, like, I never hear anyone pronounce it. I only see it written, and so, like everyone else, I don't know how to say it. But anyway, you'll get a thing that says Red Sepulchre, whatever, named items in other titles. And if you choose this one, it'll actually take you to this exact item. So this gives you a way of cross-referencing items that aren't officially designated under that title, but if you're looking at the item and you're right in front of you, that is how you would, how at least a normal person might think to call it. And oftentimes in the indicia, even if it's Hellblazer, they'll say, Hellblazer, Red Sepulchre, collects Hellblazer number, blah, blah, blah through blah, blah, blah. They will do that. Now, I will admit, we have all this cross-referencing type stuff. That's great. The publishers are starting to get their mass market, publishing, book game together, because the floppies are less and less of their revenue, and the trade paperbacks are more and more a part of their revenue. So they're starting to get a little bit smarter about how they do these sorts of things. But the history of the last 30 years of trade paperbacks is a god-awful mess. So I would say, number one, if you're looking for this stuff, look by barcode, always the answer. If you can't do it, just open up the indicia. But if you don't find it just by scanning down the title in the indicia, take what the main thing on the cover says, type that in, and see if it doesn't get you where you're going. So these days, in general, it will. So that's what I want to say about item titles and trades. Let's see here. And Steve Dazer points out sepulcher, sepulcher, sorry, a burial chamber, tomb, or grave. Sepulcher. Okay, guys, that was our word of the day. All right. And let's see here. And it looks like there's some little bit of updates of possible drama of passwords for the new requirements. So if you guys need to update your passwords on the forum, if it tells you to update your warm password and update your password. Oh, and this is nice. Brian Price says it's like a tube, sepulcher or sepulcher. Okay, excellent, got it. All right. So let me see here. All right, so other things going on. All right, so let's take the really, really strange ones. I think we've handled. Let's see, we've handled the digital comic books. We've handled trade paperbacks. We've handled free comic book day. Let's talk about art portfolios and posters. Okay, look, the thing's called ComicBase. It does books. It does magazines. It does newspapers. An art portfolio is none of those things, right? Neither is a poster. And yet, would it scare anyone to know that yes, we can handle both of those things? So no, it's if you're going to enter in, for instance, let's have a look at some portfolios here. Let's see, portfolio Mark Schultz. Okay, so all right, so let's say that this is just Mark Schultz. Okay, this one here is actually like an actual book, but there are portfolios that but there are portfolios. I was looking for portfolio Mark Schultz, but there are ones that are literally just like a big envelope which contains a bunch of loose leaf prints. What if you've got something like that? And let me see, was there an Aliens portfolio? Yes, there was. Okay, so here we are, Aliens portfolio. So what is this thing? And if you look at it, it is nothing but a giant, envelope. Inside the envelope are a whole bunch of posters. 7 plates from Mark A. Nelson, plus a mini comic by Mark Verheiden, etc. Okay, what do you do with this thing? The answer, you put it in books, and its type is going to be a weird one. It's LL loose leaf. So if you look under books, you will notice if you look under, books don't have item types, they have binding types. And some of them are really bizarre. There's foam books, there's spiral-bound hardcovers, imitation leather, journal library-bound ones. Loose leaf is probably the one you want to go with for the binding type here. But if you look at it, there are some really other strange things you can put in here. Now, there's a weird historical reason why these exact binding types get in here, because you say, but Bickford, I mean, this stuff puts us pretty far away from books, doesn't it? And the answer is not according to Amazon, because when we were setting up the book category, it occurred to us that it would probably be a good idea when we're trying to figure out what the item types are for books. Why don't we ask the biggest bookseller on the planet what their list is? And as it turns out, Amazon published us a list. And so we just use the exact same list they do for categorizing all the binding types of their books. And this is what it is. And it adds some really interesting wrinkles into the whole mix, including things like loose leaf, which lets us handle portfolios pretty nicely. Map. If you had, I don't know, a map of Middle Earth or something, and for some reason you wanted to add it to ComicBase, as long as it was somewhat related to the stuff that's in ComicBase, if you want to submit that as a correction, I wouldn't say no. Now, if it's just a map from AAA of Trenton, New Jersey or something, no, I don't think we're going to put it in our copy. I mean, there's nothing stopping you from putting it in your copy of ComicBase. But if you've got something like the map to Mordor or something like that, sure, put it in there. Why not? Just make sure you submit that as a correction, and if it's got a UPC code, put her in. You'll also notice that there's some really neat things in there, like school binding, sheet music. That is an actual thing. So if you got the Neil Diamond songbook or something like that, why the hell not? And you also, and here's another cool one, poster. Right? So why would poster come up, right? I mean, again, aren't we getting very, very far afield? Well, you might say that, except I just opened up, our latest Penguin Random House, buy it, and in between all the comic books and everything else that we were indexing were a bunch of things that look like this. I'm like, okay, barcode, Captain Marvel, Dark Past, okay, what's this? And I'm opening it up and I'm expecting to see like no, yes, you guys already know what this is. This is Captain Marvel, Dark Past, UPC and all. And yes, we get, and so does probably your local comic shop and something else. We get given 3-4 of these every week or two from the publishers. Now, I'm not saying we're going to start adding these to ComicBase. If you were to add them to ComicBase and put them as Captain Marvel, Dark Past, poster, I gotta say that there's half a chance that we'd take the correction, especially if you put the barcode in. You know how we love barcodes. That's a thing. So anyway, that's the weird stuff, and hopefully that tells you what's going on. Some things in the chat here of about Black Widow. What's going on? Let's see here. Hello everyone. This is Tyler T. Doctor Strange, Black Widow. They both had them too. Both had something. What about original art, individual pages from comic books? I'm going to say we don't have a great way to track individual pages of individual books. If I were tracking my own individual art, I mean, a couple ways you could do it. I mean, again, it's not everything based. It's comic based plus a lot of pop culture type stuff. We don't have a original art type thing. I would be tempted to handle it one of two ways. If it were me, if I had, like for instance, I upstairs I've got some pages from like 2000 AD and the trouble with girls and things like that. If you got like a nice scan of your original art, from like the trouble with girls number 10, go ahead and drop it in as a media item. It's a perfectly great use of the whole thing. If you want to use the ComicBase to track, the value of the thing itself, you probably want to not associate with the comic book in that way. So if that was a thing I wanted to abuse ComicBase to do, I would probably make myself a new probably book called Trouble with Girls Original Art, and just, put in numbers for any page, that I had in the whole thing and track it that way and put a price on it. And that way I'll always have the record and it'll, never go away. That's certainly a way that you could abuse the database, do that. I mean, ComicBase has been abused in any number of ways to do strange things. There was, I forget which university it was, they wanted to use ComicBase because it was a lovely multimedia database that was easily searchable and had pictures of things. They were tracking the bug library of their university. Sure, why not? It's like I say, just make sure you mark the stuff is in stock and don't have the database automatically remove things that aren't in stock, because you don't want to have the database remove it because it's not part of the main. But yeah, it's a thing. See here. Ed asks, free promotional posters received by comic book stores have UPC codes as their market for these posters. Perhaps a good idea to add them to ComicBase. What do you think? I'm going to say it's not been a real priority for us right now. But I gotta say, if you guys were to add them, would we start tracking them? I think there's a decent chance. The way you do it is put them under book, mark them as binding type poster, and put the UPC on the whole thing, and we'll see where it goes. I mean, if there's interest, we'll keep them. If there isn't, then we won't. Let's see here. Figuring out a database title for some posters may be challenging. No, yeah, I mean, honestly, this is like, I imagine there's a number of emerging edge cases involved in this world. I'm happy to let these things shake out as they go. Let's see here. Separate topic. In the past, Perennial requests to have a way to have ComicBase track action figures and statues. So you guys may or may not know this, is that when we did the big expansion of ComicBase to add not just comic books, but books, magazines, and newspapers. Newspapers were a little bit after the books and magazines. We, at that point, we had to introduce lots of new concepts. We had to have the idea of a media type. So whenever you're talking about an item, you have to say, well, what kind of item now? Because it wasn't just always a comic book, right? So in addition to having all the different item types and variations and things like that, you now have the idea of a media type. So while we were thinking about media types, well, what other media types might people ever be interested in? Well, we'd already bitten off books and comic books and magazines. Newspapers came along later because honestly, we want to have some way of getting like, comic shop news away from, the rest of the herd and some other things like that. And then later on, people went and indexed all of New York Times and crazy stuff like that happened. But other things that certainly occurred to us is, well, what other things do our type of people collect? Well, there's music, there's movies, there's trading cards, there's sports cards, there's non-sports cards, there's toys, there's video games. And all this was of interest to us. And we have built out media types for every single last one of them. Much of the database structure is kind of, it's kind of like your tailbone. It's waiting to be activated. It's built into the genetic structure of ComicBase. We didn't roll out with these for, I think, pretty good reasons at the time. Mostly, we went market by market and we said, look, is this strategic for us or not? Because we needed to say, do we have expertise we can add to this, which is going to, at some point, in return for us spending the time and money to make this happen, and all the ongoing upkeep. And whenever you sign up for doing any of these things, you're also signing up to become the pricing and data source for them. So you never get rid of it once you add it, right? And at that point, you are providing the pricing updates and the corrections and everything else into the infinity. So you don't want to just track everything that can be collected. You want to, Tiffany China is not going to be on the list, right? But as we went through that list of possibles, we wound up narrowing it down as we got closer to ship. Things like video games and movies went pretty fast. The thought on that originally was Amazon does a lot of trade in those businesses, and there are ways to have a strategic partnership with Amazon to use their catalog data to drive a database of that one. And the trick would be that what our role in that case would be to track what you've got, but to more or less the rules for using their data at the time we looked at it was, we can use their data as we go, but the whole purpose of the data use has to be to drive sales to Amazon, which then the way you pay for that is getting a kickback off the back end whenever anyone buys or sells something off Amazon's services, which is, that could be fine. It's a perfectly good model for those sorts of things, but it's a different model than what we're doing with everything else. So those things got certainly put on hold, and definitely there are interesting build outs on those. So for instance, if you're going to track your movies, wouldn't you also want to do that just like we do with comic books within the context of something that could play your movies? So when I went and spent several months striping all my movies up to Plex, I now not only know what I've got, I can just pull them up on my phone wherever I got. Whenever I'm shopping for DVDs, I can say, well, hey, have I got this one yet? I can't remember. I can know that, but I also, when I'm in a hotel room someplace and I want to watch a movie, it's like, okay, here we go, Fatal Attraction or whatever the thing is. You can actually just watch the movie. So there's a lot more to go with when you get into the actual media like that, in order to be an interesting program. So interesting potential directions to go, but not something we went with right away. The ones that were closest to our heart were probably the toys, the toys, action figures, and the what's this called? The trading cards. So trading cards we didn't do because as we got closer to it, and honestly, we were at the point we were literally starting to create the sample data, which we were going to use for the database, because you want to be able to kind of start the database off with, okay, we've got whatever we had in our own collections, we'll start that as the index, and then we'll take submissions from people as we go and build up to the whole thing, and hopefully it grows into what we did with ComicBase over a period of some decades. The problem we have with trading cards is that the vast majority of trading cards, as we looked at it closer, you'd be nuts to enter them into a database. I mean, just there are literally millions upon millions of cards because it's a shiny piece of plastic. That's all the thing was. And back in the day, it was a scrap of paper and a cigarette tin. I mean, that was, but honestly, those are the only interesting ones. But no, like if you just took like something even like a Magic the Gathering card, the common cards, the ones that you open up the pack and you can go, not this one again. Those ones, not only are there thousands and thousands of them, but you would have to be the most OCD person on the planet to want to be spending a lot of your time to enter something that that takes a nickel is its entire market value if it can be transacted. And we looked at the whole thing and we thought, what, we've embraced OCD enough in our lives. Let's give this one a miss. And so we kind of parked it on trading cards. And that, that kind of bummed me a little bit because it fits so beautifully with the ComicBase model. It requires like no adjustment to show trading cards in the database in terms of what we can do. It's just that the actual data entry was like, you felt like we're cutting off a lot of work for ourselves, and we're not driving benefit to the customer. We're just kind of feeding the OCD sickness is all we'd be doing. And so we just made the decision, nah, we're gonna park that one. And then that left us with toys. Now, if you guys know Mark at all, he is a massive toy guy. I mean, if you looked at our offices back in San Jose, it's like, the office he shared with, with one of our other guys. It was an entire monument to the DC universe and Batman and whatever else. Every surface around was covered in action figures of all sorts of things. And, don't even get him going on, Star Wars and The Mandalorian. Absolutely fantastic stuff. Very cool. Very interested in the whole thing. And it's an indexable amount of stuff. But the problem is that we had a competitor in the marketplace already, and so we could look at what they were doing, and then just like we looked at the possibilities of doing a retail focused version of ComicBase, we kind of wound up running away screaming. It's like the most successful product to track trade toys, action figures in the entire market, had sold like 180 copies. It was something like that for like $29 each. And that was having created everything they did. Now, you could do the thing in a web, thing a little bit more cheaply. You could have people, mass contribute to it a little bit more cheaply. But either way, it gets into a weird position where, yes, I'd kind of like to have my stuff recorded somewhere, sorta, but just like the problem with ComicBase is that comic books are one of those weird things where like it requires a lot of your brain power to keep the whole thing organized. If I have this comic in my collection, if I don't have a database to tell me I have in my collection, there is no hope of me recalling the whole thing. Whereas I probably do remember if I had, the, Marvel Legends, Deadpool character. So there aren't a lot of people who are sitting there going like, wow, I don't know. I have so many toys in my whole thing. I really need a database to keep them all straight. Now, this was before Funko Pops kind of maybe. So maybe if you have a really bad Funko Pop addiction, maybe that's a thing. But either way, it was not super encouraging when we looked at the actual economics of the whole thing. So that's another thing where like, yeah, the code's in the DNA of ComicBase. It's kind of waiting to be reactivated, but it's not something we're getting on right away because we've always had bigger fish to fry. So that's the longest answer you ever want on the whole thing. So we'll take it, like that. Agent of Camp says, I recommend making a new database if you want to keep track of custom items like cards and toys so it doesn't cause issues with your main ComicBase database. Absolutely great idea. And let's see here. Agent Camp says, how would I want to index my CG encapsulated date square from Action Comics' #1? Well, that wasn't the date square. That was the #1 that somebody razored out of the cover. It was literally, the funniest thing, if you guys don't know the story, is, Action Comics #1 is, arguably probably about a $6 or $7 million comic book at this point. Action Comics' #1, which is to say someone had found the worst conceivable copy of Action Comics #1, like some scrap of the cover, had razored out the #1 from it, somehow sold it at auction. I want to say it went for almost $1,000. My memory fails me on that one, but that's an actual thing that happened a couple years ago during COVID. No, I have no help for you on that one. Oh, I'm sorry. And he says, but I have the date square. I talked to whoever bought the #1, say, what are you doing with it? And follow their lead would be what I'm doing on that one. All right. So, all right, guys, I think that's all we've got for me in today. I'm going to call this one a win. We'll get to pricing another time. I'll say the brief question on that one is, pricing we do by essentially grinding the market. So we are evaluating something like 2.1 million data points every month of what things people have for sale, what they've sold, both on ComicBase and Heritage auctions, and what you get is the rolling average of those. Question came up, and it was really pretty interesting, is one fine point of that rolling average thing is when a thing is offered for sale, it's a nudge towards that price. It's like a vote towards that price, but it's a softer vote. When it actually sells, that's like a shove towards that price when we go to average out the items. The difference is that the actual sales only count for 30 days. After that, they drop out of the data set. We treat them as old news, and we don't mix them into the thing anymore. So if something were to say, let's say I've got a comic book that normally sells for $10, but damn it, somebody just really marketed the hell of it, sold it for $100. Well, that $10 comic book is suddenly going to, let's say a whole bunch of other people have it at $10. It's going to go from a $10 comic book to maybe a $30 comic book. But then if it hasn't gotten further sales in that, at that level in the next 30 days, it's going to start drifting back down to its base level of 10. Now, you can see it going the other way as well. Let's say it's Batman Adventures featuring the first appearance of Harley Quinn. This was a comic book that was $4, and now it's, I think, $1,000 or close to, or whatever else. This is one where, like, yeah, it somebody had it, sold it for $4. That guy was probably me. A lot of other people sold for because we weren't that excited about a Harley Quinn at the time. And then someone said, hey, I like Harley Quinn. And that became a $20 comic book, then a $50 comic book, then eventually an $800 comic book. And if the prices keep shoving it up, it will keep going up. But if people are continually listing it at a different price, but then the action is elsewhere, you want eventually the market to settle towards, well, what's it actually being offered for sale at versus what's it been sold at. I mean, you want those two things to get into sync. So the way we handled this in the past is with the idea of having a 30-day price window where it affects it quite hard during that price window, and then the effect trails off. But recent things come up, which is kind of interesting to us. And honestly, I gotta say, we're still thinking about what to do with it. Is some really key Golden Age books have come up that were quite a bit higher than you would expect them to go for based on previous sales. So in a normal end of life, another fine point of the whole pricing discussion is that let's say everyone in the world is listing that $10 comic book for $10, but you're offering your copy. you're just a believer. It's for you it's $1,000. Well, is the price 50, 100, $900 for that thing? If you're the only guy who thinks it's worth $1,000, no, we ignore your data point. We need to have a whole bunch of people think that it's worth $1,000 for us to say, it's 10 times the going rate here. Otherwise what you do, unless you have a certain number of votes for the crazy new price, is you just throw out the crazy new price, because you don't want to have a limited number of people gimmick the market without even selling the book, right? At that point, they're just people did this with the Overstreet Guide all the time. It was easy to be an Overstreet advisor. And, if you say, oh, I'm the expert on Werewolf by Night, you could just tell, the Overstreet group as well, I think they're selling very, very well in my store. And so I think the real price of these ones is 40 times what they were last year. And things like that would happen, because you're like, well, what are you going to do? The pricing in ComicBase is very democratic. We just say, well, what actually sold? So if you're going to sell it for, offer yours for a crazy price, well, that's your opinion, man. Just, to quote the Big Lebowski. But on the other hand, if everyone in the Pacific Northwest also starts sharing that opinion, let's face it, that opinion starts having a certain reality attach itself to it, because everyone who has it for the much lower price starts saying, well, hey, I'm going to mark my price up, because, maybe this guy's onto something. So you can have trends ride that way, even with a real lack of sales. But eventually there's going to be someone who rides it back down again when they get tired of not having sold their stuff. So you want to be able to throw out crazy data points, but at the same time, you want to leave it open to have the market move quite fast when the tide turns on something. It becomes the featured first appearance of a character in a movie, stuff like that. Well, the problem we're getting with Golden Age books, and I guess I have gotten into the topic a bit, is that you've got books that very rarely come up for sale. Like, you don't see Action #1s on the block at all in any form much. So when they come up, people take notice. Now, when they take notice, let's say they sell for twice as much as you would expect it to go for based on the previous performance of that book. Well, then we have a problem, right? Because we have to look at it as the editors and say, was that a one-off? right? Was it just people got really, really pumped for that sale? Maybe people really hyped the one thing is, oh no, it was the one the guy brought back from the war. It's, they tell some fancy story about it, whatever the thing was. Or was it a fluke, or is that the new normal? And the answer is, well, we don't really know. And so given that thing, we tend to do what most people do. We slow walk. Well, the thing that happened recently in this one is some items came in that had a lot of interest attached to them, and we had people call and say, hey, I actually have those ones because we have some heavy collectors in our user base. How come the price didn't move? I just saw that one move for like 1 billion times more. And the answer was because it was like 150% of the expected market value was, and without more sales of that type, it gets thrown out as noise. It gets thrown out as a fluke. And I think we maybe need to adjust things when we talk about very expensive comic books, because 30-day window is lovely when we're talking about something is killing the children. That's a wonderful metric for determining which variant is hot. That thing. If you're talking about Detective 27 or Detective 1 or Action 1 or something like that, I think we need to change something, because we can't be throwing it out if the thing's only going to come for sale. We can't throw it out for 30 days if it's only going to come up for sale every 6 months or a year. So I think we need to change something about the metric. Either that, or we need to dial down what our threshold is for considering it crazy and demanding more proof. I'm not sure what the right lever is on that right now. There's probably something that ties in with the idea of that the book is inherently very, very scarce. So in other words, this is like a filter that kicks in at $5,000 and above, for talking about very rare books, to let them maybe linger longer in the effect, or to let them rise or fall by greater amounts without treating them as anomalous. Now, a lot of times we smooth over this one. This is actually one of the very few times where people would, make noise, or we would, have a meeting inside, human computing, and decide, well, geez, what do we want to do about the latest, auctions about that thing? And then that'll be the one time you actually see us put our thumb on the scales, opposed to just averaging the market. But yeah, we are shooting in the dark here for things without a lot of data. So it's the normal things that let us, determine, like, we have a fantastic price on Cable #1. A jillion copies of that book have been sold. A jillion copies are available for sale. And I bet you we have that thing dialed in on its market price within a nickel. Action Comics #1, much harder target. So we're having a rethink on that. So send us your thoughts, but we'll look forward. We'll take it from there. All right, guys, I think that will do it for me for now. Quick PSAs on the whole thing. If this is the sort of thing you'd like, please don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. This is the sort of thing we do, and we definitely appreciate having you here. The ComicBase message forums, which, log in, log out, whatever you got to do to get onto them. But do check them out, forums.comicbase.com. And there's also a dedicated thread on the message boards for where you can request live stream topics and demos. And don't forget to check out the ComicBase Atomic Avenue, the ComicBase powered venue for buying and selling comics, books, and magazines. And if you guys have an urge to, where else, there's even a new feature we're experimenting with where you can buy collections of free comic book day things in the special section around the main level there. So try that one out too if you want to play around with blind bags of your own. So guys, that will do it, and I'll see you all on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.